Tarik Skubal of the Detroit Tigers is one of the best pitchers in baseball right now. He ranks in the top 10 in ERA, FIP, strikeout percentage, walk percentage, first pitch strikes, and early and ahead. With a fastball that touches 100 miles an hour, it's clear that the stuff is good. Today, I want to walk you through exactly what he throws, how he uses it, and where he locates it. So let's dive in by looking at his pitch arsenal and his movement plot. So I'm going to share my screen here. We can see that he throws a fastball, a sinker, changeup, a slider, and a curveball. And before I go any further, for those of you that aren't familiar with movement plots, I want to explain what we are looking at here. So the y-axis, which is this vertical line here, that is showing us what the vertical break movement is, the induced vertical movement. The horizontal line here, the x-axis, is showing us the horizontal movement of the pitch. So whatever the horizontal movement pitch and whatever the vertical movement of the pitch is, it is putting a dot in that intersection point. So these dark lines, or these dark circles rather, the bigger dark ones, that is the average movement by pitch type, while the smaller dots are representing individual pitches for those pitch types. For those of you that aren't familiar with what induced vertical break is, it is measuring the height difference between where the front or where the pitch crosses the front of home plate, rather. So let's just imagine a fastball is thrown at the top of the zone where it crosses the front of home plate, and a ball thrown with only gravity acting with the same exact release angle and velocity as that pitch. So let's just say with only gravity, that release angle velocity, it ends up here. It actually ended up here, but with only gravity and release angle velocity be here, it's measuring the difference between those 2 points. That is how you get your induced vertical break number. Horizontal break is pretty self-explanatory, but it's calculated by measuring the difference between the ball going in a perfectly straight line from release and where the ball actually ends up from a horizontal standpoint. So if right from release, a perfectly straight line ended up here, but the pitch actually ends up here, it's measuring the difference between those 2 points horizontally. And that's how you get your horizontal movement. Skubal is what we would call a north-south pitcher for the most part. And what that means is his pitches are generally moving up and down off of each other rather than moving side to side, specifically off of the fastball. And that is our starting point, is looking at the primary fastball. And for the most part, his pitches have more vertical separation than they do horizontal separation, signifying that he is a north-south guy. Now, while it isn't perfectly up and down, most pitchers aren't. The general movement or the general idea is that they are moving more up and down. And just looking at some of his pitches, and I don't have the numbers to pull up, but I can just tell you that overall, his changeup performs the best, and it's getting a swing and miss rate of 44% right now, which is incredibly high, and has an expected WOBA of 230. But truthfully, all of his pitches are performing well. His worst performing pitch from an expected WOBA standpoint is the slider, and it's at 276. So he is just absolutely crushing it with all of his pitches, and it's really no surprise based on those numbers that he's performing the way that he is. So now that we see the pitches that he has in the arsenal, let's now start to dive into how he uses his stuff. And I have left-handed batters at the top, right-handed batters on the bottom. And you can see that there's a pretty big difference in how he is attacking lefties versus righties. Lefties, he's primarily using his sinker compared to his four seam at 52.7%. He's using his slider heavily at 28%. Not really any curveballs at all. Hardly any changeups, mixes those in every once in a while. He's primarily rolling with the sinker and the slider. Against righties, he uses the four-seam fastball as his primary fastball. The sinker he throws every once in a while at 16%. Sliders, 12%. Curveballs, 6%. So not a ton with either of those. And then really uses the changeup a lot, coming back to that being his best overall pitch at 30.5%. So if we boil it down, against lefties, it's primarily sinker, slider. Against righties, it's primarily four-seam fastballs and changeups. And if we think about this through the lens of how pitches generally perform, against opposite-handed hitters, your pitches are generally going to perform better if it's more of a north-south approach versus same-sided hitters, typically more east to west is going to perform better. And while he isn't a true east-west guy, when he throws his sinker and his slider, those pitches are going to appear more east-west off of each other. So if I go back to his plot here, you can see we have the sinker here and the slider here. So while they're not perfectly horizontally or vertically the same, they do signify more of an east-west approach compared to, let's just say, he throws his four-seam in his slider or his four-seam and his curveball. So he does a really good job of maximizing the usage of his pitches to get them to perform optimally. So now that we see the usage of his pitches, let's now start to look at the locations and where he's exactly attacking the zone. And we'll start by looking at right-handed batters. And the first thing that jumps out to me is that he's not really getting super fine with his locations. Like the four-seam fastball, where it's the most red, that's where he's throwing it the most often, is basically middle away, goes up, but it's not like a specific spot that he's going to consistently. So it's kind of in the middle away. The sinker, now he's getting more precise with this pitch. This pitch, he's going glove side and up, which is actually a really good location for left on right sinkers. Changeup, generally speaking, looks like he's just trying to go down over the plate, not trying to get cute with it. And that plan is working really well based off of the results. Curveballs and sliders, doesn't throw a ton of them. Curveballs looks like he's just trying to throw it over the plate. Sliders really looks like more of a backdoor pitch. He's not throwing it, down and in. He's trying to just maybe throw it earlier in the count for a strike, or maybe later in the count as a freeze pitch. But generally speaking, he's working more backdoor with that pitch. You can't really argue with the results because he's performing really well. I would say he could probably use his curveball more, just because that is going to play well against right-handed batters. But that fastball changeup combo has been working so well. He freezes guys with a sinker on the inner half. Like, obviously what he's doing is working. It's just, if I wanted to pick something out, it could be he might benefit from throwing a few more curveballs just to mix it up a little bit and to change the arsenal a little bit. But overall, doing super well. Now when we go to lefties, four-seam fastballs, doesn't throw a ton of them, but when he does, looks like he's trying to go up. Sinkers, he's really throwing middle in. I imagine he's just probably aiming middle and letting it run and let it work itself to the inner half. Changeups, doesn't throw many of them. Sliders, this is where it's interesting because he's primarily a sinker slider guy against lefties. And there's a lot of sliders middle up and then a lot of sliders down and away. And if I were to guess, the ones that are up are earlier in the count or before 2 strikes. And then once he gets to 2 strikes, he gets more fine and tries to go down and away to execute it. So this is interesting. You look at most pitchers, it's kind of always in one location, but he's using his up a little bit and down and away. If I was going to get nitpicky here, I would say like probably getting it all the time down and away more often would be beneficial. But he's doing such a good job of limiting free passes that I imagine part of his game plan is just attacking, showing his stuff. He knows his stuff's good. He's coming right at you. He's not trying to get cute. He's going to make you earn everything. And then maybe when he gets to 2 strikes, he gets a little bit finer. So that plan is working for him. So once again, it's tough to argue with his plan when he's having the success that he's having. But if I'm just looking at this, from the outside looking in, yeah, if he could adjust that slider and get it more consistently down and away and avoid the ones that are middle up, then he's probably going to perform even better with that pitch, which is scary to think about that he still has from a location standpoint. He could throw to some more optimal locations. But once again, what he's doing is working super well. So in summary, he has elite stuff, right? Like it's pretty clear looking at his plot, looking at the results, elite stuff, and he pairs that with pounding the strike zone. That is a deadly combo, and that's what leads to being one of the best pitchers in baseball. So before I let you go, if you like this new newsletter, I did want to let you know that I just came out on Monday with my new course called Pitch Design U. So analytics like this are covered in one of the modules. And then along with that, some of the other modules are going to cover the fundamentals of pitch movement. So we'll dive into exactly what pitch movement means, what all the metrics inside of it are, and what ultimately leads to pitch movement. And then there's going to be a big module where I dive into pitch grips on how to throw every single pitch type in great detail. I'll show you major league examples. I'll show you edgertronic footage, as well as walking through, what pitcher would benefit from adding a certain pitch or taking away a pitch. And then at the end, I also have a bonus section where I'll walk through some case studies. I'll show you some scenarios of, some ideas of what you could do with a certain player. And maybe that, is a player that you currently have that you could apply to it, or maybe you are that player that's going to be showing up in that example. So it's really good stuff. I'm really excited about this course. I hope that you'll join us and look inside. There's 3+ hours of video content in this course. And once again, it takes you through 3 modules. There's a bonus section as well as a couple of downloadable things. So that's all I have for today, and I'll see you guys next time.